Good morning. I take the report as read. I do have a few notes, so bear with me while I just go through them. As you'll be aware, in the report, there's 5 properties being reported for recommended for disposal. All have gone through the council rationalisation process involving consultation with departments, CCOs, mana whenua, relevant local boards, ward councillors and the Panuku board. We'll jump straight into the 2 properties in Papakura, 26 to 32 O'Shaughnessy Street and 36 Coles Crescent. As has been mentioned in the local board presentation, both are off-street car parks no longer required by Auckland Transport or Council's Community Facilities Department for transport car parking purposes. The local board has relayed to Panuku its desire to revitalise the Papakura Town Centre, given its status as a metropolitan town centre, and has requested that Panuku consider Papakura as an unlock category in its priority development location program. Panuku has responded to this request and assessed Papakura against the criteria for an unlock. Although Papakura does not meet the criteria, Panuku has agreed to work with the local board and will still seek to support development outcomes in Papakura for urban renewal and housing purposes under its support development category, and we reported this back recently to the Planning Committee. Also included in the support categories are the surplus corporate accommodation site at 35 Coles Crescent and the park and ride location, which has been mentioned today. Panuku considers that the sites located at O'Shaughnessy Street and Coles Crescent are suitable for development housing purposes and are great candidates to catalyse development in the town centre, support the revitalisation of the Papakura Town Centre in line with the local board plan and the Papakura Metropolitan Centre Framework for Action Plan. Panuku has worked with the Papakura Commercial Group, which Lee Orton is the convener of, when investigating these urban renewal and housing outcomes. There is potential to enter into development agreements for both sites with interested local developers and interested iwi authorities to achieve these outcomes. The Papakura Local Board and the Papakura Commercial Group have been advised of these opportunities. I won't go into the local board's views. I'm sure they've been expressed well today. Auckland Transport has advised Panuku that the operational review to understand existing parking behaviour in the Papakura Town Centre is in its 2018-2019 work programme, but Auckland Transport has indicated that these 2 properties are deemed surplus to its requirements and it will not be in the review. This information has been communicated to the local board on the 10th of October, it was in the 24th of October report, and it is again in this report to the committee. Although the Papakura Local Board is opposed to a disposal, both sites provide the opportunity to deliver housing outcomes and contribute to the revitalisation of the Papakura Town Centre, which is an aspiration of the local board. If the 2 sites are approved for disposal, Panuku will continue to engage with the Papakura Local Board and the Papakura Commercial Group regarding development outcomes proposed for both sites. Thank you. Free for questions.
Questions? Councillor Newman.
Yeah, Chair. So just to foreshadow, I'm happy to move the item, but I am going to move it with the wording that I proposed for A Roman numerals 1 and 2. So my question,
And you have a seconder, I believe.
and Sir John is happy to second that.
I just question, just a clarification. So you're moving the whole thing, but isn't it an amendment?
Well, I've been told that procedurally. So what have you just?
Correct, so there's no motion on the floor, so
All right, so
Councillor
it can be
Newman's
amended
going to
and
move
as
the
it
new
is.
wording.
Great, thank you. Just checking.
That my question really relates to the interface between what Panuku is proposing here and its understanding of the parking study. So you're confirming that your understanding is that the parking study will consider the parking needs in Papakura, but will not consider these assets as part of the solution for the parking needs.
Yes, that's correct. It's information we received from Auckland Transport.
If I can take the opportunity to add to that, our colleagues at Auckland Transport have reviewed these car park sites again. Their position is that their position hasn't moved since 2015 when the O'Shaughnessy Street car park was assessed by the AT Strategy Department, and the Coles Crescent car park was reviewed again, and it is not, in their view, required for car parking. The review that Auckland Transport have agreed with the local board to undertake will look at the rest of Papakura and not these 2 sites, and that study is due to take place the latter half, the first half of this year.
Coming, is it? Others might have other questions, but.
Councillor Casey.
Yeah, I'm still smarting from Felicity's comment about cast-off social housing. So it's a question to either of you. Does Panuku have a view about social housing, housing for older people, or Kiwi Build as not being appropriate development for a metro centre or a town centre?
With respect to the O'Shaughnessy Street site, the neighbouring property owner is looking to develop his site with a view to putting a childcare centre on the ground floor and residential accommodation, hopefully Kiwi Build overhead. This proposed developer has approached Panuku with a view to acquiring this site to add to that, we think that Kiwi Build in that area is a good outcome for that site and for the area.
Thank you.
Mike Mr. Chairman. Just asked previously a question around Ngāti Tamaoho. In the report it says at paragraph 23, Panuku replied to Ngāti Tamaoho confirming its interest to be noted on property file and information be considered by council's governing body when the properties are recommended for disposal. I'm assuming that's this meeting, which is the Finance Performance Committee, including myself. And 24 then says, following the Finance and Performance Committee's consideration of the site's recommended, Panuku will again contact Tamaoho and Ngāti Whananga regarding matters of cultural significance. So, when you say in 23 that the information will be considered by council's governing body, what information will that be when you haven't even got it?
Yes, through the chair, could you please refer to the attachments which list the specific?
I have, and they say the similar things. So, what's the information relating to where Tamaoho have advised high cultural significance Papakura is, the information that you're providing to this meeting for this committee to consider?
Through the chair, so the standard process is we engage with them. They've indicated that they've got a cultural and commercial interest in the site.
So that's the only thing you're telling us, that they have told you they have?
Yes, they
You've
have
got
said.
nothing to back that up and provide further detailed information for us to consider?
There is a separate document they have forwarded to Panuku as part of our consultation for other sites, such as the service centre at 35 Coles Crescent. The separate document indicates
Can I just stop you for a minute? Is it in this report?
No, it isn't.
Oh. Why not?
Apologies, we didn't include it as an attachment to a public report. I wasn't too sure whether the information they gave us was a public document.
Okay, I understand that, but it is quite relevant to paragraph 23.
Through the chair, we opted to summarise their feedback to us. We have met with Ngāti Tamaoho about this site and about the other Coles Crescent site. They have indicated to us that they have a commercial interest and interest of cultural significance, and they have requested that we meet with them further should this committee approve this property for sale or development.
Okay, so
which we will do.
Just so I can get a better grasp on this, you haven't quite got the information about the cultural significance of the property, if there is any. They're saying culturally significant regards Papakura, so I get that in general. But if you're then proposing it to be recommended for disposal and it has cultural significance to it, who will buy that?
Through the chair, as indicated, we have agreed with Ngāti Tamaoho that we will work with them should this property be considered for sale, just in the same manner as we are with the other Coles Crescent.
So I've asked these questions before, so let me be a little bit more detailed if I may, Mr. Chairman. If the site is culturally so significant that nothing can be further developed on it, who will you dispose of it to?
Through the chair, Ngāti Tamaoho have not indicated that it's so significant that it cannot be disposed of. They have indicated to us that that is of commercial interest to them as well, and we have we have said that we will work with them should.
So you've got a letter saying from them saying that they've told you that it's not that culturally significant to them.
No,
That's right. Well, can I ask you that question because, Mr. Chairman, it says on 24 we'll find out what the cultural significance is after we decide to get rid of it, or dispose of it, should I say. And my question to you is, shouldn't you know that stuff before you decide to put it up for disposal, knowing who you could dispose it to? And I'm not talking about this property, I'm talking about all the properties that you deal with, and when you engage with Mana Whenua and Mātāwaka, and the significance they relate to these properties. Because my concern is that you go and get a resolution here today to dispose of, and then you go and find out, oops, once the existing things are removed or whatever, or it's on sold, you can't do anything with it because it's so significant. So,
The Chair, we
Can't
have
be four horse.
some information here that we're happy to read out to this committee from.
Yeah, and
the
through the Chair, our
authority.
initial consultation is
Yeah.
when we have properties up for potential disposal, we go to the interested iwi groups who have registered interest for the area.
I understand.
We list the properties and we do ask them, is there anything which would prevent a council disposal, or would you like other ways to recognise significance through signage, through other ways, or record it on the property file? The message we got back from our contacts was that the general area, the Papakura, is of high significance.
Yes.
Nothing would prevent the disposal of the subject site, and that their commercial interest is being registered, and we will certainly follow it up with them. And we do follow up with a further response saying thank you for that.
Okay.
We
So-
haven't received anything further back which would prevent a disposal of the site.
So just to be
specifically.
clear, thank you for that, that's very helpful. So that's in writing from them, or an interpretation that you had?
It's in writing.
Okay, thank you.
All our consultation is done in
No,
writing.
thank you, that's what I wanted to hear. Because you should have provided that kind of information to us.
We will take that feedback
Yes,
on board.
please.
Thank you.
Yes, I can certainly look at providing that through the earlier memo I sent through to the IMSB as well. Yeah.
I'm on the Finance and Performance Committee. Thank you.
I think that's been noted. Councillor Collins? No?
That was me.
Oh, they look the same.
I'm saying then, they work together.
We look very similar.
You do, you do.
Right.
Two questions. My first question is, it says in the report that further advice is received from Auckland Transport confirming that the sites are not required for car parking or transport infrastructure purposes. How is that statement correct if the parking survey is currently only just being done now?
Through the Chair, as mentioned before, these two sites will not be part of the operational survey
Sorry,
that
apologise.
Auckland Transport are undertaking.
Sorry, apologise, you did say that. My second question is to the mover or the seconder. What is the consequential OPEX associated with the retention of this land? Because if the board is agreeing to pay, they need to know how much it is.
She's asking about the consequential of
And if they're going to pay, it's and please define will assist. It's either pay or don't pay.
They
So
will
do we
find
know what that is?
We can work through the wording on that.
Clearing.
Good question.
Do you know?
Through the Chair, we don't know what the consequential OPEX is, but we understand that it is relatively low. But we don't have an exact figure for
Pretty
that.
low?
Yeah, through the Chair, the Coles Crescent's pretty good condition rating. There's no works required. O'Shaughnessy needs some asphalting and some re-gravelling of the rear part of the property, which is a right-of-way access to the adjoining property. It's not actually a car park area, but needs some work.
So potentially talking 200,000 over 3 years?
We are not sure. We can go away and get that information.
I suppose,
That's it.
Councillor Newman, my issue is I just want to know how much it's going to be and who's paying. And to that end,
We can change assist.
change assist to pay, and they need to have confidence that they're happy to pick that up. And my next question is, why did you want to keep it for 3 years and not wait?
Well, maybe I can address
Yeah.
that when it comes to my
Okay.
time to speak.
All right, sorry, all right.
We are suggesting up to 3 years.
I'd be happy to support you, councillor, if you took away will assist.
And up to 3 years.
And I will support
Board
it if it
speaking
says up
to
to
the
3
previous.
years. Okay, we have Councillor
Oh, for sure,
Cashmore.
amendment of the amendment.
Agreed to
But it's not an amendment.
No.
Amendment.
that. Councillor Cashmore?
No.
No? Councillor Walker?
Sure. You may not be able to answer this, but I'll ask the question anyway, and that's around the car parking review. Do the terms of reference around the car parking review take into account parking requirements for park and ride, the transport corridor to Hamilton that apparently is under consideration, and requirements for parking associated with shared vehicles, electric vehicles, bikes, lime scooters. Are they in the terms of reference for the car park review?
Through the Chair, my understanding from Auckland Transport, I don't know if they are, but my understanding from Auckland Transport is that the park and ride demand is quite well understood by Auckland Transport, and that the business case for the new park and ride facility building is being progressed at present, taking into account the immediate and future needs for the park and ride. The review is, as I understand it, a tactical review to understand how the current car parking, both public and private, can be utilised going forward. The study is due to actually take place in February, with a view for the work to be complete by May. It is, we have asked the question as to whether and why these two properties will not be will not be included. Our understanding from Auckland Transport is that they've been reassessed, and given that the that the O'Shaughnessy Street property has been deemed surplus to requirements by the Auckland Transport Board, it will not be included in the study, and the Coles Crescent car park was never on the Auckland Transport fixed asset register. It was always a council asset, and however it has been looked at recently, and when Anthony undertook his expression of interest for rationalisation, Auckland Transport chose not to express an interest in car parking, following an assessment at that point that it was no longer needed.
So the assumption that I'll make based on all that is that the short answer is no. And I just want to speak to this because on an ongoing...
No, we're on questions.
Okay. I'll speak to it when I have the opportunity then.
Okay. Right. Councillors, remember we're only talking about 1, 2 and 3, and we've got a new 1 and 2. I'm actually getting a feeling around the table that I think if the mover and seconder put up to 3 years, that this would go through, and we probably don't need to have a long discussion about it.
Yep.
But it's up to you guys. So I've got 5 people now want to ask
the up.
questions, and so Councillor Bartley, then Councillor Filipaina, Councillor Cooper,
Councillor
Councillor
Moore.
Hills, Councillor Hulse. So it's up to you, but I mean, I think we could almost resolve this with a word or two.
I'm happy to just talk to this now if it persuades
So
people.
I'm asking those 4, are there vital questions you want to ask? Because we could move to have Councillor Newman talk to this straight away. We might shortcut it, that's all. So I'm asking.
I still want to ask a question about
Okay, right, Councillor Bartley.
Ipuna.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. I want to pick up on what the Mongakiki Tamaki Local Board requested, that there's be some encouragement with Housing New Zealand to identify Crown land for possible land swaps in Mongakiki Tamaki. Can that be done? Because that is what they condition their support on the disposal on.
Through the Chair, apologies, I haven't gone through the preamble for the Waipuna Road properties that Councillor Barclay's talking about. Do you mind if I just quickly give the preamble so other committee members
Okay.
up to speed? So 22 and 28A Waipuna Road are residential properties that were acquired for transport purposes in 2007 by the former Auckland City Council. It was for the purposes of a new route through Waipuna Road. They are no longer acquired by Auckland Transport. They've been transferred over to Council. Panuku are looking to work with Housing New Zealand, who own adjacent property, and also with property that Council has already approved for disposal. There's an opportunity there to develop, provide a greater development and provide housing outcomes. So at the Mongakiki Local Board meeting 2 weeks ago, as Councillor Barclay has mentioned, the local board did have a number of questions and did resolve to support the disposal of the properties, but did want to engage with the Crown through Housing New Zealand, TRC, HLC in terms of potential land swaps. The advice to the local board on the night from the local board services relationship manager and myself was these conditions can't be attached to this specific disposal, and my understanding was that the local board would initiate their own discussions with the Crown separate to what Panuku and Auckland Council were trying to initiate here. And that's what the resolution was. It was endorsing the disposal and that the local board would start their own discussions with Housing New Zealand.
My apologies, councillor Bartley, I didn't realise, I was actually probably dealing with 1, 2 and 3. I didn't realise you wanted to talk about Mount Wellington, so
Through the chair, may I just do the
however-
preamble for Butler Ave as well? I can see councillor Filipaina probably questioning me as well.
No, I wouldn't do that to you, my friend.
So-
I was just going to acknowledge the local board, sort of saying, we will, once the revocation is done, and we can help towards the long-term plan selling of assets and non-service land. Just our bit towards that.
Okay, so we've just got an update here. My understanding is councillor Newman and councillor Walker are actually willing, with this amendment to 1 and 2, are willing to move all 6, okay, within, sorry, 7, within A plus B. Is that
Yeah,
understanding?
that's what I'm comfortable to do.
So, there's still councillor Cooper Hills, Holson, Tuckbury, so...
It was one was, I thought I heard Councillor Newman say up to 3 years, which I'd support. But my question is really around the opportunities and the risk. It talks about lost opportunity to enhance Papakura Town Centre, and we've talked about supporting the support process. So if there's no sites to sell, no sites to develop, is that still a possibility? So if these don't sell, is there any chance to do the support thing if there's no vacant sites? That's what I'm trying to understand, if Panuku have offered that.
So through the chair, Panuku has offered the Papakura local board assistance really in terms of we've agreed that we will look at all of the sites in Papakura that that will have development opportunities through a support lens. Through our assessment that was previously reported to the Planning Committee, there were 4 sites that have got decent development opportunities. These 2 car park sites, the Papakura Park and Ride site, which we are working directly with Auckland Transport on and due to go out with a commercial strategy early in the new year, and also the recently deemed surplus corporate property sites. So those
the 4 are these 2 are included in that?
These 2 are included in that 4.
So then there's a bit more limited scope to do any kind of changes in the town centre if you take 2 off the table. Is that what?
That's right.
Thank you. Oh well, so be it then.
Councillor Hills?
Hills or Hulls?
Hills, Ned Hills.
Through you, Chair, mine was sort of a similar question to Councillor Cooper's, because the way this would go if these 2 properties were put up for disposal, you'll be going to developers to work out a plan for, you know, Panuku outcomes through the SOI. So it's not just you're not just going to sell them off. Going to actually work for a positive development outcome, and if you don't get one, I assume they don't get sold.
That's right. Through the chair, Panuku is very cognizant of the metropolitan zoning in Papakura, and we're very aware of the local board's aspirations for the town centre. We've been working with the commercial strategy group, which has been headed up by Lee Olton, and we should these properties be approved for disposal, we would look to seek development outcomes on those sites. We have given the Papakura local board assurance that we wouldn't just put them on the market for sale as a straight disposal. We would look for controlled outcomes through a development agreement.
Okay, so this would be potentially a missed opportunity to help get some of the work done that under that plan from Leoton, or for us.
Through
We
the
can't do a unlock or transform, so this would be one way of getting some of that work.
This would be, I suppose, a current lost opportunity in that we have a couple of developers that are interested in these 2 sites. They're local Papakura developers who know and understand these sites, in particular the 36 Cold Crescent property which is heavily constrained, and the developer is proposing to retain the car parking requirements for the adjacent kindergarten, retain the access across the site to the service lane, and to provide a number of, I think it's about 36 apartments. So.
And sorry, through the chair, and install stormwater retention tanks to resolve the flooding issues.
That's right. So, as I said, the property is heavily constrained. It is in a flooding zone. It has stormwater issues, and the developer has indicated, one of the developers interested has indicated the provision of stormwater retention tanks to alleviate the stormwater. So that is, in our view, a very good outcome for 36 Coast Crescent. Should it be retained in the short term, possibly those opportunities may come up again, but it certainly at this point is a current lost opportunity.
Councillor Halls.
So I'm still confused.
Beyond the
Are
council,
we
I'm doing
adding the
nothing.
up to or not?
I think Councillor
I'm going
Newman
to
wants
change
to
it when I can
wants to
speak
speak
to
to it first, but I think it's going to happen, but
So
I can't say that.
So my question is, without that, it's an entirely different proposition. How can we, I guess, it's either going to happen or not. So we can't ask questions about I'm sorry, it's just a bit confusing. You know, you put up a recommendation and then you signal you're going to change it. But to me, if you're genuine, you actually put it up there. So is it going up or not?
He'd like to speak.
Well,
I mean, if I'm allowed to speak, I'll speak to it, but I'm not being inauthentic in my reasoning.
Okay, so I will reserve my right to speak when I finally understand what it is that's being proposed, because the two are entirely different, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
I will not support this in its current term. I will consider if it's changed.
Yep. Thank you. Right. Member Tote.
Kia ora, Mr. Chairman. So this is questions, and I thought it was just 1 and 2, so that's why I stopped short. But there's a question that's actually flowed on for the Papakura car parks, and that is, you just said to me earlier about there's a process, and when I asked the local board, they said they'd been engaging over 36 Coles Crescent. Now you've just advised you've got a prospective developer. So my simple question is to you, is that Ngāti Tamaoho?
No, it's not. We've got a number of developers. That was an example
Okay.
of what we could do with the site,
No
given it's heavily
sufficient.
constrained.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So my other questions relate to Waipuna Road, and after fleshing out there was further feedback around Tamaoho and the Papakura car parks. Is there any more information to be got on the Waipuna Road properties around Ngāti Whanaunga?
Yeah, through the chair, I've gone back 3 times to that certain iwi entity. They have promised further information. They haven't provided it.
Nothing
I went
received.
back as recently as yesterday.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, look, my humble apologies, but, and I don't know where, but it's going to be through you, Chair, where this question should be pointed at, but the 3 years is a concern for me. It really is. That's based on what I've heard. So I think the question is to Councillor Newman. Councillor Newman, I mean, you know, up to 3 years is an issue with me, though the question is, if it's up to a year.
I'm in a queue to speak to this.
Well, no, what I'm asking you the question because I want to know, because if it's 3, I'm not prepared to support it. That's the reason I'm asking in regards to a compromise. So, I mean, if you want to wait until
Okay,
the
right,
debate,
no, we're now
but
moving
the
to,
question is asked.
thank you for that. We are now moving to Councillor Newman to speak to his amendment.
I've got a
Just don't know
question.
then.
Oh, sorry, Mayor Gofton has a question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My question is this. I'm struggling with a description that there's a parking review that's going to take place starting in February and reporting in May, but it's going to exclude these 2 sites. My first question is, why would you exclude the sites when we want a full picture of what's going to happen? And then I'm also struggling with the fact that the parking review comes after we get an announcement, apparently, from Auckland Transport about what they're doing with the park and ride building. I cannot see why those two shouldn't be one and the same. It is totally illogical to say, this is what we're going to do with the park and ride, and by the way, then we're doing a parking review. You do your bloody parking review, and then you decide, you take that into account as an input into what you're going to do in the park and ride building. And then secondly, you know, and I will say it, Mr. Chairman, so I struggle with the original resolution, but I also struggle with the amendment, because if we're going to say we're going to lock in keeping this land for 3 years without having any regard to what the park and ride building would be, you know, we all want to go to heaven and none of us want to die. So we want to spend 25 million on a parking building, but we won't sell $2.3 million of assets to return to council. You can't have it both ways. So I'm also joining the voices around this table of saying, for heaven's sake, in our resolution, please keep some flexibility so that if we get a good resolution on the park and ride building, we then say that overcomes the need for keeping a relatively small number of car parking spaces here, and some of the money from that can go towards the cost of what we might do in the park and ride. So I'll come back to the question. The question to you guys is, why the hell would you come down to a decision on a park and ride and then do the parking review and not the other way around?
So,
Heaven and hell in the same speech.
Okay. I will, in defence, remember this is Panuku, not Auckland
No.
Transport. So
I'm asking for Panuku's view on what I've just put. I understand that it's Auckland Transport's decision, but to me, somebody around this table might be able to explain it to me, but I can't see why you'd make a decision and then do the review.
I'm just clarifying that we don't want to have...
Yeah, I'm not
Marion
crucifying
and Anthony
Panuku over this. It's,
Marion.
but you can perhaps convey our view to Auckland Transport.
I can do that. My understanding through the chair is that that the park and ride business case, we've been working very closely with Auckland Transport on the park and ride business case. It isn't concluded, and it does take into account the parking requirements. We understand from Auckland Transport the parking requirements for the park and ride are very well understood. We, as mentioned, will be working directly with them in terms of a commercial strategy for that park and ride site. Given that these two properties are not on their fixed asset register, they have indicated to us that they will not be included. However, we can go back to them with this committee's view that they should be included.
Thank you, and I would appreciate it if you'd do that. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Right. Councillor Newman. We are there.
Yeah, firstly, I don't appreciate any of my colleagues suggesting that I'm not genuine in seeking a solution here. So the purpose of the amendment was to seek to try and give time for the purpose of coming up with a solution to what is being a disconnected mess. Do I have the call?
Yeah, no, sorry, I was reading.
No, it's all right. I had comment on my right. A disconnected mess in terms of what parts of the organisation are taking responsibility for delivering a solution in this space. I'm very comfortable, and I'm sure the seconder of the for 1 and 2 is happy to put for up to 3 years, with respect to the OPEX for the local board to pay for the OPEX, Councillor Simpson, although I have to say, and perhaps if the officers agree with this, frankly, I'm not quite sure why the local board should have to fund the OPEX if it indeed is a situation whereby we need to be retaining these for a period of time, but the local board to fund the OPEX of these properties for up to 3 years. Chair, I think that the Mayor has encapsulated very well the conundrum that we have here, whereby we do need to complete the car parking study, but as Marion has pointed out, that current study will not consider these assets because they are not deemed to be serviceable assets that are necessary. I think that's a wrong assumption from Auckland Transport's perspective. They don't consider 36 Coles Crescent because they don't own the asset. Well, the reality is it's a car park, and it's an asset in the Papakura town centre, and we are the council. If we're going to be joined up in our thinking, we would first and foremost think about what is in the town centre, what makes a town centre. Car parking helps to make the town centre, therefore that needs to be considered as part of the analysis, and the Mayor is quite correct in his consideration of that. So the second thing is the sequence of this work. You would want to complete your analysis before you consider options for disposal. What's being considered here is a resolution for disposal, which is regarded as quite separate to the car parking study. I think we should resequence that. With respect to the master plan is about the Papakura town centre as a metro centre, and some colleagues might want to think about trying to achieve a support via Panuku for a good outcome. That's absolutely intrinsic to what is trying to be achieved in Papakura, but the master plan at its essence is about getting people into the Papakura town centre. Not all of them will live there, but getting people into the Papakura town centre, and fortunately or unfortunately, whatever your perspective may be, car parking is part of that. In fact, it's part of Papakura more than it is part of some parts of Auckland, because we have a higher level of private vehicle mode share compared to other parts of Auckland. And that will continue to be the case for quite some time. And the chair of the Papakura Local Board confirmed that we have some bus services, but actually parts of this network are very poorly serviced, and other parts of the Auckland region in the south don't have any bus service coverage whatsoever. I want to apologise to Councillor Casey, because if the inference is that Papakura is a community of snobs and we don't accommodate social housing, that is wrong. We do, and we need to support social housing in the future, and we will have social housing in the Papakura town centre, and I will vigorously support that outcome, and because we need to reflect the sum of all parts. But the final comment that I wish to make, Chair, goes to the issue of the Papakura Ollie. Now, I haven't had a chance to sit down and talk to the Mayor yet about what it is that the Mayor has included in the Mayor's proposal in relation to the Papakura Park and Ride. And my question really to the Mayor is, what does he think he is funding with that bid? Because the advice that has been provided by Auckland Transport to the Papakura Local Board and to me is that no decision has been made by the Auckland Transport Board, but the options that will be presented to the Papakura Local Board in 2019, the options being looked at is providing additional at-grade parking. This will increase the park and ride capacity in the vicinity of 130 spaces, and that the high level cost of that option is around $4 million. Providing a multi-storey parking facility, creating additional 300. The high level cost for that option is around $25 million, and it's unlikely to be the recommended option. The high cost is predominantly due to the poor ground conditions, except that. Another option is providing a single deck parking facility which will create an additional 70 spaces, a high level cost of $12.5 million. The preferred option commencing design would take place in March 2019. All of these options will require NZTA funding, and due to the poor ground conditions, construction will have to be done over the summer. It's recommended that construction commence in October, November 2019 and complete with completion being early 2020. That's for option 1, which is at grade. Mid 2020 for option 2. That's with the single. That's with the multi-storey, and for option 3, late 2020. So we've got at least 2 years to get the Ollie solution in place, which is why I think there needs to be some time. So I'm very happy with whatever wording we come up with, but which gives us the ability to deliver the park and ride Ollie in whatever form it's agreed, because that's necessary in this part of Auckland, which receives all the parking from, well, a lot of the parking from Franklin. They receive that because, of course, the disincentive for parking at Pukekohe is getting your diesel, go to Papakura, exit the diesel, go to another platform, get into the electric train and continue north. So that is the purpose of the wording, Chair, and I'm happy to move.
Right, now councillors, really, I think the only issue is people agreeing with up to 3 years or not agreeing with 3 years. Now, I've heard Councillor Filipina had an opinion, but so I don't think we really need to have people commenting on transport strategy for South Auckland or anything. I think we're narrowing it down to the up to 3 years is my, so unless someone, because I know Councillor Walker was, Wayne Walker indicated he wanted to make a speech on it, but I don't know whether it's necessary. But so I'm asking, we could put this now.
I move we put the motion. I haven't spoken to it.
I wanted to speak to it.
Sorry?
I did want to speak to it.
Okay, right.
I moved a procedural motion if there's a seconder.
You can decline it, your Chair.
Needs to be
Heard the
seconded.
vote rather than your speech, right?
Yeah, point of order, you've only had one speaker.
Sorry?
You've only
Needs
had
to
one
be
speaker.
seconded. It doesn't exist.
So you can't move a procedural motion after only one speaker. Move the one.
Okay, we've got Councillor Filipina and now we've got Councillor Wayne Walker.
Chair, I will not be supporting this because of the 3-year term. This is why I asked the question of Councillor Newman. And, you know, His Worship the Mayor explained it in regards to the strategy, and I think I would have supported up to a year, especially in regards to this. And, you know, my reasons are bullet point number, on number 31 bullet point, lost opportunity to develop with members of the public and interest iwi authorities deliver urban renewal, housing outcomes in line with Panuku development objectives, the Auckland Plan Enhanced Papakura Town Centre. I then have a look at number 32. Should we end up approving the disposal, and I mean at the moment I would support a year, but it was also around revitalising the Papakura Town Centre. Now, Councillor Newman didn't want to do that, so, and I'm not prepared to end up for 3 years having the property there. I'm thinking about the local board and with the OPEX, and I think that if they're willing to hold on to the property, they should be paying for the OPEX in regards to both properties. And I am putting aside the Auckland Plan outcomes and the long-term plan disposal of non-strategic assets. This is why I would be happy to vote for up to a year, but that is not an option, and as a result, I will not be voting for up to 3 years. Thank you.
Councillor Wayne Walker.
Sure. I want to support Councillor Newman, and the reason for that is I'm really concerned about our ability to meet our low carbon requirements, and as far as I'm concerned, an instance where you've got parking that supports park and ride, that supports the possibility of parking for plug-in EVs, bikes and other things is paramount. There may be an interim requirement at this point, but so be it. And my real concern is that on a decision-by-decision basis, we're actually not doing that consistently. And this is another example. We need to make those changes and those shifts immediately. So for that reason, I'm supporting this, and also because I support what I've heard from the local board, and everything they've said to me makes sense.
Well, good. Right, we're going to put the motion.
Sorry, I'm speaking, Mr. Chair.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Darby.
I haven't spoken. I intend to move an amendment by replacement, the words 18 months, replacing the words 3 years. So up to 18 months. I move an amendment accordingly.
Have a seconder?
And call for a second.
I'll second it.
No,
Oh, you won't be.
Yeah, no, I'd second 18 months
We've got,
after my
right,
year.
well, now we've got an amendment, we'll put that up, so,
Up to 18 months. So just briefing, speaking very briefly, look, I've heard the concerns of the board and Councillor Newman. This work does not take that long. We all know that that work does not take that long. There is some urgency in not getting people just into park in Papakura. There's some urgency about getting people to live in Papakura. I don't want to see people living in cars and car parks. I actually want to see them living in homes in Papakura. Have we not quite got the dire situation that we have in Auckland, where we are not housing Aucklanders? And it happens in the south as well. Please, let's give some urgency to housing people on these addresses, not just parking them temporarily on these addresses. We've got to be consistent, Mr. Chair, and it concerns me that we are just putting this off. Let's make some room to accommodate Aucklanders in homes, not in cars.
Okay, so we have an amendment and it's getting worked on. It'll pop up. We're just taking, so we're obviously taking 3 to 6, 3 to 7, I should say, has not been changed. So we have an amendment speaking against the amendment.
Can I have a question for the amendment?
Okay. Yep.
My question to the mover of the amendment is, why is that necessary? If it's up to 3 years, it could well be done within the 18 months. Are we not just, you know, making an amendments for the sake of making amendments? It could well happen earlier. I think everyone's got the gist around this. It needs to happen with urgency. I am asking why you have chosen to put a finite, well, you're lowering the 3 years to 18 months, when it could well be your amendment as part of the original anyway.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious, because there's a risk of the can being kicked down the road another 18 months. Yeah. And we know that the work can be done within that time.
Well, I mean, how do we know that?
Well, there is a risk. Councillor Hoss.
Just a question. I've got a huge amount of sympathy for Councillor Darby's point. So my question is, and I think the Mayor raised it quite rightly, there is work being done on the parking strategy, and it is quite, you know, we argued this at the workshop yesterday. Why does Auckland Transport have the ability to move property in and out of the portfolio? The portfolio is actually Council's portfolio and should be discussed by Council. That's, I think, a legislative amendment we need to make, and the sooner that happens, the better. So, you know, Auckland Transport, you're on notice. The reality is, however, we do need to provide parking. No one's arguing with that. The bit that Councillor Darby raises is, if a fantastic development comes our way, which addresses the issue of parking, but also houses people, not just cars, because the Zac Grade car park is just about cars, and as a C40 city, that's not our business. We're in the business of housing people, not cars. If a fantastic opportunity comes our way, just even signalling the 3 years, to me, just sends the wrong signal. So you know, I would have supported absolutely us grabbing the opportunity and selling this for a better development, but I am sympathetic to the car park issue. So my question is, how quickly can this piece of work be done that looks at these pieces of land, as well as, it might have been contained, I'm sorry, Councillor Newman, yours was a very clear but quite long piece of information, and I may have missed it contained within there. How quickly can we do this car park strategy study?
Through the Chair, my understanding, we've just spoken to Auckland Transport before this meeting. They do apologise, they wanted to be here but couldn't at short notice. My understanding is from them that if we look at putting these two properties back in, they did indicate they are out of scope, but if they are requested to put them back in to undertake the parking survey, not a parking strategy, a parking survey, that initially they indicated to us that it would be done by May this year. There would be a slight delay, but it would probably be done by the end of the 2019 calendar year.
Okay, because that's really the issue, Mr. Chair. The only thing I'm hearing from our Papakura people is we don't want to lose parks because we're trying to support public transport. Kia ora, and good on them for that. But if we have the idea of what we've got and what we need, and that can be dealt with in a fantastic development, I think that is the hook. I think the 18 months, 3 years is not the hook. It's understanding the parking requirements and grabbing the opportunity to have those addressed in a really good development. So, you know, I think we are dancing on the head of a
Yep, so
at the moment. So I'm going to support the 18 months because I think that gives us a chance to do it.
okay, so I'm letting a little bit of blending of question and statements here because we're almost there. So now going to Councillor Cooper.
I just want to support this because if we look at the Howick issue, the local board were given, I think, a year, and it was about 4 or 5 years down the track before we ever got to it. So I think if we give this a bit of sense of urgency, look, if it had to have a couple more months at the end, whatever, but I think and the other issue is, you put it smack bang, you know, again, another 3 years out, people are coming up to the elections within that year and people get very, you know, scared by the horses. So I think you put it into another, within several months of an election, which doesn't make it popular again, so, which we always get hamstrung by.
So I don't think there's any more questions. So we've got Councillor Newman, Councillor Wayne Walker, and Councillor, was that Wayne Walker or John Walker?
I had a question.
Oh, okay. Okay, we'll take the questions.
questions.
Councillor
Okay,
Walker?
my question just goes to the statement that was made around a survey. As far as I'm concerned, what's implicit in Councillor Newman's motion is around a review, and I would suggest that that review considers the strategic issues that the Mayor raised, for example. If we just have a survey, that's just going to be a survey of the current situation, and that is not going to inform us at all. It's the changes and the strategy that needs to cover. So my understanding, Mr. Chair, is that review incorporates the notion of strategy, not just a survey.
There was a question.
I'm not sure whether that was a question, but anyway. Councillor Newman.
Yeah, I'm just incredulous, Chair. I won't be supporting this amendment. I find it extraordinary that we would be having a... Look, by my own counsel, I can assure colleagues that I and other elected members from the South absolutely own the dilemma that we have in relation to housing people in need. Social housing is one of the most critical issues in the South, and so be assured, Councillor Darby, that this is absolutely of critical consideration for me and critical consideration to other members from Manireo Papakura, including the Papakura Local Board. I think the issue here is that you can't consider the dilemma of the lack of joined up organisational thinking in relation to parking just in terms of the survey. There is a need to get the solution in place around the Papakura Park and Ride Ollie. This is something that Callum Penrose has been talking about for 6 years, and we're still not there. The purpose of the wording, and I made the change, the wording, up to 3 years, is not to kick the can down the road so that we can have no solution. The purpose is to provide time to implement the solution, which is what is necessary in what is a difficult environment with poor geotechnical profile of the land where the park and ride would be built. Auckland Transport's management team don't even have their options analysis and recommendations ready for the board of Auckland Transport yet. This was something I think that former Chair McEntee made a public announcement. This is what was about to happen 3 years ago. He's nodding at me. We're in agreement. And of course it hasn't happened yet because we continue to not be able to land a solution that is fundable for the park and ride. This is more than just a survey. This is about an implementation of a solution. And goodness, wouldn't that be good to get the infrastructure in place to meet the needs of a town centre that is a metro centre so that it is resilient for the future, actually resilient for the now as well as the future. So I think that this will require up to 3 years, but the wording up to was wording that was proposed by me to try and assuage the concern. If it happens in 6 months or 12 months or 18 months or 2 years or whatever, fine. But up to 3 years was a deliberate word choice from me to address the concerns that we were hearing. So I won't be voting for this amendment, and I think that we should vote the amendments down and just vote to adopt the wording as was initially proposed by myself and Councillor Walker.
Councillor Watson.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think this quibbling over 18 months is not really very helpful here. I think we were moving towards a common sense approach there of up to 3 years. If it takes a year or 18 months, I'm sure the local board would be more than happy with that. I think that would be correct to say that, yes. So there are obviously a series of moving parts here, and I think what's becoming quite apparent with the Papakura local board, but also with other local boards, is they're taking a more strategic, long-term view than other parts of council, and this has been reflected here today. We obviously got a situation in Papakura where there's a pretty dire need as far as parking goes, and particularly parking that goes to accessing the train station. We've had this stick chucked into the spokes in terms of the park and ride and what may or may not happen there, and it's obvious that's not going to be a quick piece of work. So I would have thought the entirely pragmatic option, given the very compelling arguments put up by all the members of the local board, was to go for that up to 3 years to allow sufficient time. For goodness gracious, if we know anything about the Auckland Council, it's better to err on the side of time than it is to assume things will get rushed through. If there is a resolution within that time, well, great. That can happen. Perhaps the local board, if they're really looking to deal to their commuter problems, they should maybe look at trying to get a ride share program going where they might be able to subsidise each commuter up to $14 to get to the train station. That might be another option they could consider. But I would suggest, ladies and gentlemen, we had a solution on the table here that was meeting with everyone's approval, and this is just kind of irritating quibbling, to be honest.
Yeah, go off and then Councillor Fletcher.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I absolutely accept the need for proper park and ride facilities at Papakura. That's why it's in the mayoral proposal. The mayoral proposal says that we begin spending this year 5.9, that's 2019-20, 5.9 million as the first tranche. What we tend to do around council is we keep extending out deadlines, and the more you extend out deadlines, the more officials will take the time that you've given them. I would like to see pressure put on Auckland Transport to deliver this study and to deliver it quickly. I would like to see a solution brought forward for the people in Councillor Newman's ward, because they need a solution. We may, of course, be dancing on the head of a pin on this. Less than 3 years, could be within 18 months. But the reason that I'm supporting the amendment moved by Councillor Darby is because I believe that we are sending a clear message to Auckland Transport. We are putting in our budget proposal the money to start spending in the coming financial year. If we say we're going to leave it 3 years before we make a decision on this land, the message subliminally goes to Auckland Transport, well, they're not in any particular hurry. I think we are in a hurry. We want to get this job done. And of course, if they didn't do it within the 18 months, then there's no reason that you have to suddenly sell the land within 18 months. But I think you do need to send a clear message. We want the park and ride. We want to address the parking need. We would also like, if you do the park and ride properly, to be able to use the land available for construction of housing where we also have a real need. So, while up to 3 years I was happy to support that, I'm worried that it might send the wrong message, and if we put pressure on to get Auckland Transport to do it more quickly, let's use this opportunity to do so. The budget has got the money there as my proposal to you for 1919, 1920 and each of the 2 years thereafter. If we keep kicking the can down the road, A, we won't get the park and ride facility we need, and B, we won't get the housing. So I'm suggesting that there is an advantage in the message we send by making it less than 18 months. It still allows the parking study and the park and ride study to be done in plenty of time, but sends the message, let's get on and do it.
Right, we were almost there, but we're not there now. We have Councillor Fletcher and Councillor Cashmore. Then I'm going to take a vote on the amendment by division.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was delighted to see Sir John Walker and Councillor Newman put up the motion today, because I feel that this council have really betrayed and let Papakura down. I know that the Papakura Park and Ride has been in the SOI for the last 6 years. It might be 5, but I think it's 6. And I know from the period I served on the board of Auckland Transport, every year we thought we were there. Every year it was going to happen. And in the meantime, Papakura has just been left to flounder. And I am deeply ashamed of the response that this council, through AT and the levers we have let this situation occur. So I support Sir John Walker and Councillor Newman, and I support those who want to see this work done more quickly. But having taken into account the historical failures of AT, I think it is better to have up to, because we won't have to have it come back repeatedly. So I'm very keen that we can all come together in a consensus to say we actually want to see this fixed for Papakura. We need to have a coherent and comprehensive strategy, has been clearly articulated by the mover and the seconder, and I think we're actually getting a little bit petty in this amendment, so I will be supporting the motion as put forward by Councillor Newman and Sir John Walker. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Cashmore and then Councillor Simpson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Very, very briefly, just for councillors' information, the structure plan for Drury, which borders Papakura on the south, is landing early next year, and that is including extra stations and park and rides as well. So that timing this work, bringing it in tighter, actually helps land that structure planning with a coordinated response. So those two pieces feed on each other, simultaneous in delivery would be good.
Thank you for reminding us of that. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I think this is quite an amazing situation. I think we're all singing from the same song sheet and arguing between 18 months and up to 3 years, which could well be 18 months or 12 months. Because the local board came to us with their issues around this, I've reached behind the table and spoken to the local board, and their preference is to go up for 3 months, up to 3 years. I think everyone around this table acknowledges as soon as possible, but it was the board that came to us with a slight change. I think the other thing is that both the councillors for this area are moving and seconding the original motion, and we should be mindful that these are the people who represent this area. And I think for me, if that's good enough for them, for both of them to share that, plus the local board, it's good enough for me. So I'll be supporting the original motion.
Okie dokie. Right, by division. Oh, Councillor Bartley.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to offer my support for the original motion put by Councillor Newman and Councillor Walker, because they are the councillors for those areas. So that's where I'm at. And I'm not sure what the process is if I vote against this. Do we get the chance to vote for the original motion?
No,
if this falls, it's the original.
If this fails,
Cool.
we go back
and,
to the...
and I just want to offer my support to the Papakura local board, because I lived in Papakura, so I know the area and I know the issues there regarding parking. So I empathise with what they're going through, considering what we're going through in Panmure with parking at the moment.
By division, putting this. Right.
Amendment.
Thank you, Chair. A division has been called on the amendment. Councillor Clow.
Yes.
Councillor Bartley.
No.
Councillor Casey.
No.
Councillor Cashmore.
Yes.
Councillor Collins.
Against.
Councillor Cooper.
For.
Councillor Darby.
Yes.
Councillor Filipaina.
Aye.
Councillor Fletcher.
No.
Mayor Goff.
Yes.
Councillor Hills.
No.
Councillor Holtz.
Aye.
Councillor Lee.
No.
Councillor Newman.
No.
Councillor Sayers.
No.
Councillor Simpson. Against. Councillor Stewart.
No.
Member Taipari.
For.
Councillor Sir John Walker. Councillor Wayne Walker.
No.
Councillor Watson.
No.
Councillor Young.
No.
Right, it's lost. So we're going back to the original motions. I'm going to
Score,
put
14
all of them, A and B. A, which is 1 to 7, and B. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against.
Okay, want it
1
recorded?
and 2.
Do you want it recorded? No, we'll
Yes,
just-
recorded, thanks.
Okay. Right, well, I think we just might have a 10-minute break.
I'll do it in 18 months, Daniel.
I do it in 9.
Take 7.5 years.